سوا على الهوا سوا على طول سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
يمكنكم الآن متابعة برنامج سوا على الهواء على قناة ميوزك لايف عبر الدش نتورك شانل 633. البرنامج يبث لمستمعينا يوم الثلاثاء الساعة 8 صباحا حسب التوقيت الشرقي للولايات المتحدة في ميشيغان وتوليدو وأوهايو ووينزر كندا على الموجة المتوسطة wnzk 690 AM، ولمستمعينا في مناطق واشنطن وفرجينيا وميريلاند على الموجة المتوسطة wdmv 700 AM. يمكنكم الاستماع للبرنامج عبر الاتصال من أي هاتف على الرقم 702-489-0120. يتلقى البرنامج اتصالاتكم مباشرة من داخل الولايات المتحدة على الهاتف رقم 248-557-3300. الإضافة عبر سكايب US Arab Radio. للاستماع للبودكاست ushammedia.com.
Good morning, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. I'm glad to be with you this morning, and we are continuing our discussion from the previous program on the American Muslims in the U.S. in a changing America, the new realities and new dynamics. This is part 2 of this important conversation and discussion. And with me this morning, again, discussing this important topic are my two distinguished guests, Dr. Mike Ghouse and Ms. Younis. Welcome to the show. Good morning, and thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Mike Ghouse and Ms. Younis.
Good morning, Sahar.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being with me this morning. And last time we were talking about some of the realities facing American Muslims after the results of the elections. And of course, it is no secret that there has been an atmosphere of shock among many American Muslims and fear, to be very honest, among many as well. Let me just start by asking you, Mike, and then I'm going to ask you the same question, Ines. Are these fears, in your opinion, exaggerated or are they actually justified? Mike?
Yes, are indeed justified because what Mr. Trump had announced in the campaign during the elections, and by appointing some individuals to his cabinet who will justify to fulfill the obligation that he had promised are there. For example,
Can you please raise your voice a little bit, Mike, and come closer to the phone, please?
Okay, I'm speaking from my car. Sorry about that. I think what Trump had said he wants to do, and he's got these people who are ready to do that, like Giuliani, General Flynn, and these people are very not good for the nation, America, and that fear is legitimate. Had he appointed different set of people, there would have been, that fear would have been mitigated. But the fear is exaggerated because of these appointments. And we hope, I do hope, Sahar, that ultimately there is a goodness in Trump deep inside. And he is a whimsical man. I don't think he would want to see an America that is destructive, even though Giuliani and some of these guys, they want to go very extreme radicalism. Trump will stop them. I think there is some goodness in him that will stop. And I don't think the fear is legitimate, but exaggerated fear may not be legitimate. We may have to work on changing the situation. I guess the question will come, what are we doing to change the situation?
And Ines, in your opinion, are these fears among the American Muslim community in the U.S. justified or are they blown out of proportion?
I think that we are living in a world now where perception is reality. So the facts are less relevant than they once were, especially given the fact that we live in a world that's just permeating with social media and access to information and information overload. So what is reality and what is the truth and what are the facts on the ground it's become all very confusing for people. And Trump and personalities like Trump, populist movements, are capitalizing on this fact by using emotionalism to get people to act on a perception of a fear that may or may not exist. What are the facts? It's really hard to tell. We can ask the same question of Americans, or I don't want to use the word Americans because we are Americans, but people who are fearful of the terrorist threat. Is a terrorist threat real? How real is it? What are the chances that you're going to be attacked by a terrorist relative to getting in a car accident? I mean, all these questions come to mind. The fear is real if you're going to measure it based on what our perception of that fear is. It is real, maybe not in a literal sense, in the sense that the threat is imminent, but it is real in the sense that our world is in danger of being enveloped by a kind of emotional politics where facts are no longer being employed to direct our policies. And that's where the fear is. So I think we need to be very conscientious and cautious not to run with this, not to overreact, not to get into this kind of like bandwagon of playing the victim or being victimized or feeling victimized too prematurely and feel paralyzed by that. So this is where I stand on the fear factor. I think we need to be very careful not to act on our perceptions, because our perceptions are constantly being manipulated.
But definitely, I mean, I do agree with you on the point about the fear element. I mean, one of the things that some commentators and media analysts and spokespeople have talked about was the heightened, quote-unquote, fear appeal, especially in this presidential election, and how there has been this tone of playing on people's fears and sometimes building on this, theme of fear as a way of gaining votes and gaining, people's support to go to the polls and actually vote. And Mike, back to you with a question about how real, in your opinion, are some of the policies that Trump talked about in terms of, imposing a ban on Muslims, or even the whole idea of the Muslim registry, the idea of having Muslims register. Do you think these are, policies that could actually be put into implementation and become actual policies, or do you think this was part of his campaign rhetoric and that now they're not going to be truly implemented?
Well, it's a very tough question. So, given the situation, just yesterday, one Muslim in the Ohio campus opened the fire, and of course nobody was killed, thank God. But still he injured 9 people. Now it gives the ammunition to those people who want to have the Muslim registry and ban Muslims. It gives them the strength to say that, look, what Muslims are doing. I fully agree with Inas. Facts simply don't matter to people. If, for example, if we as Americans, Muslim Americans, integrate into the society, the more we become one with the union, we should all be alike. That means if you look at the statistics, last year 355 mass murders for a population of 322 million. That comes to 1.2%. By that token, there were 2 mass murders by Muslims. If you convert that, it is half of that. There should have been more Muslim mass murders. If we become fully integrated, like every American, our murder rates, suicide rates should go up, but it has not. That should be commended and applauded about Muslims. There is a restraint. Muslims are turning in bad guys to FBI. The FBI has acknowledged that. And given that, I think this, the chair, the Muslim registry, they're pushing for it. And in the name of safety, in the name of securing Americans, including American Muslims, they're pushing for it, creating, Ted Cruz had advocated monitoring the neighborhoods. This is ridiculous. It creates jobs, I guess, for the security firms. Maybe we need to check if it's being paid by the security firms to promote these ideology. But it is real. I'm afraid the registry will come, even though it is anti-constitutional, even though many Americans will stand up against it. But look what's happening to the Republicans. The ones who are completely against Trump going constitution, they are standing up quietly supporting him as if that is what they had wanted. So given that it is, what can we do? What if he goes to the executive orders? There is nothing we can do. I think what we need to do is be proactive rather than react. As Younis said, we need to find ways to be a part of the American society, to be like everybody else, without giving an ounce of our faith. There should never be a compromise in faith, but we need to be part of the society, fully integrated. And particularly, I guess you may come to that question, we need to reach out to the disaffected Americans, those Americans who are hostile towards Muslims in particular. They are good people, very good people, but they are afraid of Muslims. Wrong or right, as Younis said, perception is the reality now. We need to reach out. What I have done on my part, on my Facebook, I have announced and I have sent emails to people to have a dinner for about 25 people. As an example, 12 people who are diehard supporters of Trump and 12 with Hillary, and have a sit down and a conversation, find out what is it they really want. How can we together, collectively, change the fear atmosphere that is in America, where Muslims, immigrants, blacks, every American, disaffected American, live in harmony. What does it take? And that dialogue is so critical at this time. We need to be proactive, and I fully agree with Younis. We cannot react and cause them to justify their actions. We need to prove to the world that we are good people, we're hospitable people. We have nothing to do with those bad guys. We condemn them bad guys like everybody else. Our fear is their fear. We need to come to that point.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And Younis, the same question to you. Do you think that some of these policies that were announced earlier in terms of imposing a ban on Muslims and imposing a Muslim registry are actually policies that the Trump administration will put into effect, or do you think they were more like campaign rhetoric and that they will not be truly implemented? In a few minutes, please.
Okay, so do I think it'll be implemented? I think it's very possible. It is unconstitutional. That I can say without a doubt, without having any kind of degrees in constitutional law. Most Americans recognize this as unconstitutional. However, all it takes to override the Constitution are emergencies. And every time we've had an emergency, we've had legislation that has violated people's constitutional rights. So my fear is that some emergency might occur that would then legitimize or justify executing some of these policies. So I'm very fearful, and I think the best we can do to prevent this, A, is not to cooperate with it, and B, is to cling to the Constitution. It is our protection. The law is our only protection.
There have been also calls, Younis, from non-Muslims to actually register as Muslims. They said that if this unconstitutional Muslim registry was to actually be put into effect, of course it's unconstitutional, like you and Mike have pointed out. Many non-Muslims that I know of, they went on social media and elsewhere and they said, if Muslims are going to be required to register, we are also going to be registering as Muslims. Your comment on that, please, Younis.
I think that that's a very meaningful gesture. However, I really do not believe that any American should cooperate with a policy that is so clearly in violation of everything you stand for as an American. So I don't think I think non-Muslims should come to our defense by protecting our right not to register. I would never cooperate in a policy that violates my rights, because you're violating one minority's right, you're violating everybody's rights. If you can justify a policy that is towards one particular group, you can justify it to any group. So this is a slow erosion. It's starting to happen, and we need to nip it in the bud, not with these grand gestures of of, I stand by you, we're all in this together. That's all beautiful. It's very reassuring, but at the end of the day, the law is our protection, and we should not compromise on it. I don't believe in poetic justice is going to be effective in this particular case. I think no one should cooperate with a policy like that.
Right. So your position really is more like, stand up together, not to register anyone in the first place, rather than if you register, I'm going to register with you. That would be your position.
Yes, absolutely. No one should register. And we should be unified in that position.
Right. Thank you, Ines. We will come back to this interesting and important conversation right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them one or two benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are talking today about American Muslims in a changing America, new realities, new dynamics. This is the second part of this important conversation, and with me this morning discussing this important topic are Dr. Mike Ghouse and Ms. Ines Younis. Trump's changing rhetoric has been something that many people have been talking about. People have been saying that in 15 days, he changed his mind about some issues 15 times. Which should we believe, Mike? I mean, the candidate, Trump, or the president-elect Trump? This pendulum of going back and forth on some issues and some of the campaign promises that have been changing, this idea of the changing rhetoric, how should we as American Muslim community perceive this or understand it?
I think we should encourage some of these steps he is retracting. He is backpedaling on some of the steps. For example, Muslims, banning Muslims. Now, from the tone originally it was all Muslims, then the tone changed towards the end of the voting to Muslims where there is a lot of terrorism. And now it has come to a temporary ban. So it is changing tones in several ways. And that we need to encourage that ultimately he should come to a position that through the vetting process, those who are known to be terrorists, we should bring them, anybody, no matter what religion. But religion should not be the test to bring in and vet people. As Yana said, Constitution is the safest thing we have. If you stick to the Constitution, this country has the most stable government in the entire world for nearly 240 years, and that is because we stuck to the Constitution. We should not deviate from that, and I'm within us that we should not do the registration, fight for it, registration, and let our Jewish brothers, Hindu brothers, and everyone stand with us not to register rather than register, which may change the equation. The Jewish, the President Greenblatt, he was the one who boldly announced that he will be the first one. In our Thanksgiving dinner last week, Andrea Barron, she announced, and about 150 people in the audience, including Hindus, atheists, and everybody, stood up strongly saying that we will register. And in the State of the Muslims program that we do every month, one of the atheist spokesperson representing the atheist organization, she said that she will stand up for Muslims, but she also advocated the same idea that we need to stick by the Constitution. So this is a good thing this is a very positive thing happening, and the candidate Trump, is not the same as the president-elect Trump, and I believe the President Trump would be a lot more toned down version of the candidate Trump. And let's encourage that instead of criticizing, we need to encourage what is good and may criticize what is bad. That way, he will see that Muslims are being fair. They're supporting where he is right and not supporting where he is not right. Then he can start seeing that his policies, some of the policies are right or wrong. So we need to focus on supporting what is good and discouraging what is bad and sticking by the Constitution.
And Ines, if I come to you with the same question, something that, a lot of the American Muslims I talk to, and actually even the non-Muslims as well, have been talking about this idea of the changing rhetoric, the back and forth and the shifting, and Trump's, campaign promises, the pendulum effect, the fact that some of the things he talked about during the campaign, he is backing away from some of them, he's changing his mind on some of them. This whole notion of the changing rhetoric and the back and forth, again, the same question I asked Mike, which should you believe really, candidate Trump or President-elect Trump, and what do you make out of this, and how can this affect the American Muslim community?
I think it's a complete waste of time to try to make sense of anything that comes out of Donald Trump, because his strategy is to be as random as possible. And it's the best way to keep people on their toes is to be unpredictable and to be random. And we've witnessed this in the way that he has dealt with the media. Every time he's been under any kind of scrutiny, he throws some peripheral issue into the media, which ends up being discussed in every 24-hour news cycle. So he exhibits the personality traits of a dictator, which has the entire country depending or feeling like they're at the mercy of his personality issues. And that is not how democracies and republics operate. America right now feels like it's standing on shifting sand because we are at the mercy of this man's mood swings. And I think to get away from that, we have to cling to what is solid, what does not change, and what does not and should not change is the Constitution. The minute we mess with the Constitution, we are done for. Then we really are at the mercy of appeasing this man. And this is how dictators get their jollies. They get it by having people, their constituents, depend on them and depending on appeasing them and pleasing them. And we're seeing some of that even in the Muslim communities that are appealing themselves to the Trump administration in hope that it will somehow give them some leverage at some point. And all these are very futile exercises. I think right now we need to really just be the sane voice and the same mind, and not get sucked into analyzing Trump and will he or will he not stand behind what he says.
The point that you mentioned about, some people who expressed, acceptance or approval of some of the Trump's policies brings me to one question I really wanted to bring up, which is a fact that 13% of American Muslims were told to have voted actually for Trump. And that came to me as a total surprise. He said things during his campaign like, Islam hates us, the ban on Muslims, the Muslim registry, all of that stuff, which was alarming, and as we explained earlier, raised some fears within the American Muslim community for sure. Ines, how do you actually make sense of the fact that 13% of American Muslims voted for him? And actually, let's face it, some Latinos, some African Americans, some women, 51% of white college women voted for him. There's a group called Women for Trump. I mean, in a few minutes, what do you make of this? How can you actually explain it?
Well, there are several explanations. The one that initially came to my mind was that I think that what they're buying into is the narrative and not the man, because the alternative right narrative, the racist narrative, the fear that we have about what the Trump administration represents and stands for is just too horrible a scenario. It's just so horrifying a scenario if we really take it to its logical conclusion. But I think for some people, psychologically, voting for Trump is kind of a form of denial. It's their way of saying, oh, he's benign. We're overreacting. It also could be a way of appealing themselves to their enemy in some respects, or denying the fact that Islam is an issue or a problem for this administration. And for some Muslims, I hate to say this, but there is a narcissistic element there of wanting to be the one person who has a different opinion and a different voice, and who has some kind of rationale or intellect or rationalization that the rest of us are not privy to because we're too provincial and too paranoid. I mean, there are many different explanations. I'm not totally shocked that some Muslims voted for him. I think that you can take some little aspect of his economic policy and cling to that. And there are people within the Muslim communities who always side against Muslims because, as insiders, they feel that it gives them more credibility to attack the fact that the Muslim community has not reformed itself or changed its tone in the direction that they have been wanting to have it changed. So, you know, there are different psychological reasons, but I'm going to say they're all psychological.
And Mike, I mean, your comments quickly on that in a few minutes, the idea that 13% of American Muslims actually voted for Trump, as well as members of other minorities, including Latinos, blacks, and women. What do you make of that, Mike?
This is a very easy answer. Everything Ina said, I'm agreeing with it. In addition to that, particularly Muslims, those Muslims we really can't pinpoint that have been here. They are afraid. They are afraid that this one or two Muslims coming and making a mess out of everybody. I was surprised too, like Younis and you. There are Muslims who are telling me Trump is right. Let him not bring any more terrorists. Let him not bring any more Muslims. We have a safe haven. We are having a good life here. Why do we want that life to be destroyed by these terrorists? That is one. The other thing that I heard from women is that let there be a registry, Muslim registry. Let's weed out all the bad elements from us. If Muslims cannot weed them out, let the government weed them out. And these Muslims sadly don't realize once you mess with the Constitution, there is no end to it. They need to stand by what is Constitution. But there is justification among Muslim women that let's weed out all the terrorists, let's lead a safe life. And among Muslim men that have been here for a long time, he said, why do we want to mess our life? It has been good for us for the last 50 years. These terrorists come and change our life. So they are also driven by the fear. And as the other people are driven by the fear, we need to address the fear and separate facts from myths. The terrorists are not there among the immigrants, they are terrorists. And that is the same percentage of terrorists as in everything. As originally recorded, there are for 355 mass murders, only 2 are Muslims, but statistically it should have been 5 or 4 because of the more we integrate, the more we become one with the nation. We should act like everybody else. We are not acting like that. We're still a safe community. We're still supporting what is right and not supporting the extremism. We're reporting to them. So I'm not surprised with 13% of Muslims supporting Trump because they are driven by the same fear as the other.
Right. We will come back again to this important and timely conversation right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them 1 or 2 benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
سوا على الهوا سوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and today we are discussing the situation of American Muslims in a changing America, new realities and new dynamics. This is the second part of this important and timely conversation, and with me this morning discussing this important topic are two guests, Dr. Mike Ghouse and Ms. Younis. I also want to add something to what we have been saying before the commercial break about those American Muslims who actually voted for Trump. Some of them, Ines, appeared on media, and the concept that we have in journalism and communication studies, as you know, I'm a professor of communication, is we have this principle that says if a dog bites a man, that's not news, but if a man bites a dog, that becomes news. In other words, everything which is novel or different or peculiar or unique that is actually standing out from the rest of the crowd attracts immediate attention. Would you agree that there is an element also of craving publicity and craving being in the spotlight that might have motivated some of these American Muslims to actually take this position?
I think subconsciously, absolutely. No one is immune to that appeal. But yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. But I also want to say that those individuals are known for having been disenchanted with the Muslim community for a long time and being outspoken against the Muslim community for some time now. So this might have been an opportunity to voice their grievances in some dramatic way, and also to gain the media spotlight. Yes, for sure, without a doubt, I think that was a huge motivation for quite a few of them.
And some of them, of course, they got some airtime, and we've seen them on some of the most prominent media networks, television networks, and my initial, gut reaction was, well, they only represent a small fringe of the American Muslim community. Where are the mainstream voices, and where are the voices that represent the majority of the American Muslim community? Which takes us really to the point we have been talking about last time as well, about the media. And it's so important that I would like to revisit it again today in our second part of this important conversation. We cannot turn a blind eye to the role of the media. Ines, how much is the media to blame, really, for what we are seeing now? When I talk to some people, they say, oh yeah, it's not a pretty situation, we are in a tough position, it's a difficult spot, it's a difficult period of time, but hey, we can point fingers of blame to a large extent to the media. The media played a role in building up a lot of what we are seeing and witnessing now. How much do you agree with this statement, Ines?
I agree with that statement, but how can we hold the media accountable as one entity and one group? There is a lot of credible, respectable media that exercises a great deal of integrity, and they're out there. So do we blame the media or do we blame the consumer? Because we tend to perpetuate a lot of this, popular culture style reporting that is really very detrimental to our perception of reality, which we were talking about earlier, about how our perception of reality affects the way we behave and the way we deal and conquer these issues. So, it's just too obscure and abstract for us to talk about the media as if it's one thing that we can control. I think we need to, as individuals, make better choices about what we consume when it comes to media. And we have to think of it is a for-profit industry. So they are out there to get attention. Their mistake was in giving Donald Trump the spotlight and showcasing him. And one way that we can actually be our own media, since we are all have access to social media, is not to propagate and share negative incidents to the degree that we have been. I agree that every time there's a hate crime, we should be reporting it. We should register this in our psyche and in our media, but not every time there is some incident by some 13-year-old of fear-mongering or swastikas, or do we need to be sharing that to the level that we are? Because it's just creating an kind of an artificial atmosphere that we are reacting and acting against. And I think that is really clouding our judgment and our ability to take more constructive actions towards changing. It is a battle for people's perception. So we need to really be focused and committed to the positive things that are coming out of this, I think, national tragedy. And that's what I try to do. I try not to overemphasize all the horrors that is going on, and really try to showcase the positive things that are happening in our communities, which tend to not get as much media attention. So yes, I blame the media, of course. I blame everybody, but I think we all need to take individual responsibility.
And I think one of the principles, in the media is when it bleeds, it leads, which means that when there is conflict and war and negativity, violence, extremism, you name it, that unfortunately seems to attract the media's attention and to make headlines, news headlines, more than many of the good actions and good deeds that, average people, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, are engaging in on a day-to-day basis. And Mike, if I come to you with the same question I asked Ines about the media and the media's role in all of this, and how much can we actually point fingers of blame at the media, what would you say about that?
Sure. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes, I can hear you better now. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Dallas, Texas, with my son and his family, and they're all sleeping. It is cold outside. I'm speaking from the
that's
garage.
Fine. Yes,
Sorry
I can hear you
that.
better now. Go ahead.
Okay. I think partially we should blame the media, but we should take the blame on ourselves. When Trump said something about the rapists, Mexicans, how many Muslims, let's talk about Muslims, recirculated that news, the video clips to everyone. But when the New York Times and other newspapers criticized Trump, how many Muslims recirculated that? Not much. There is entertainment value in something bad, and Muslims and all Americans are guilty of recycling the bad news. And if there is a good news, we don't watch. We turn the TV off and go to the next. And we should be blamed also for encouraging bad as opposed to supporting the good. Partly we are responsible, partly media. Talking about media, Sahar, I will send you the invitation today. The National Press Club is holding a conference this Thursday evening about the role of media in the election. So you might want to come there. I'll, if you have the time, send you the note. But yes, media, but I cannot blame the media. Look at New York Times, Huffington Post, Washington Post. They all were critical of Trump non-stop. They were pointing out, listing. In fact, in Huffington Post, there is a lady named Kuruvilla. At the bottom of every posting they had, they were saying, Trump is evil man, don't vote for him. I mean, the media did play a good role, but somehow that we are stuck that media supported him. They did not support him, except the Fox News. No other media supported him. They criticized him, took him up, pulled him apart. And I don't know how we can blame the media, but I would blame ourselves for watching those clips again and again, which we should, but we fail to circulate the good news, the critical news about Trump to everyone.
I think that's a very important point about circulating the good news and really changing the narrative. And when it comes to changing the narrative, I cannot ignore bringing up the issue of social media, because social media did play a very important role in the elections. Actually, Trump was, using Twitter in a very effective way in this presidential election to try to reach out to a certain segment of the U.S. population that ended up voting for him and supporting him. And they saw him as, quote-unquote, authentic Trump, at real Trump on Twitter. And it seems that social media in this particular election really was a double-edged sword. In a certain way, it spread certain fears among people, sometimes spreading Islamophobia, but on the other hand was also used as an effective weapon by American Muslims sometimes to, counter some of the attacks that were, targeted at them. For example, the hashtag Can You Hear Us Now Twitter campaign that Muslim women started after Trump attacked Mrs. Khizr Khan for being silent in the Democratic National Convention when her husband was speaking on stage, and the hashtag Muslims report stuff, which some of the American Muslims actually started as well on social media when Trump gave an answer to a question in the second presidential election saying that Muslims should report stuff, and Muslims started a hilarious, very funny campaign trying to make fun of this particular point and saying, we should only report stuff like my mom cooks the same food every day, or my brother does not make his bed, so I'm reporting him now to the FBI. Ines, your comment on the role of social media and how vital and crucial is the utilization of social media in this particular election, and also how can we make the best out of it moving forward?
I think that it's a game changer. I really think it's a game changer. And I think I really have a lot of confidence in social media, maybe too much, because the last thing to go in any kind of dictatorship is free press. So if we have nothing, we at least have our voice on social media. And as bad as it can get, and it can be, and as corrupt as it can, direction it can take, I will take that any day over losing my right to speak out. So I am grateful for social media. I think it's a wonderful tool, and I think part of the appeal of Trump to his constituents was not that he is part of the lower class, he's your average Joe. He proved that he is the average Joe because he was not so too elite to indulge in Twittering and Facebooking and engaging in social media. That's kind of what made him appear to be a common man. But there's nothing common about him or his life or his background. He never had a rags to riches story. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. What made him a common man was the fact that he was using Twitter, that he was talking to people directly, that he was using language that was not elitist, not above people's head, and people related to him on that emotional level, and that was where his appeal came in. So social media is really critical and should be used for good and should be used effectively. And I think that the problem is that good people, principled people, tend to gravitate away from this kind of cesspool because in their mind it's kind of an intellectual gutter where like all the worst elements of society tends to drain through social media because it's open to everyone and you get a lot of your Kim Kardashian nonsense being filtered through it. But we should not do that. I think we need to employ social media to get our word out, to get the message out. And so I'm all for it. I'm a big supporter.
Absolutely, and very, very important, a very important tool, especially that so many young people are on it now 24/7. As I said, it can be used as a very effective tool. And Mike, you're starting a very interesting program called Muslim Speakers Training. Obviously, you have the State of Muslims events that you talked about before, but also you have the Muslim Speakers Training. In a few minutes, how important is it to have a new generation of trained Muslim speakers who can address the media?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question because we had a meeting with the evangelical pastors who had come up with a survey showing that the evangelical ministry does not trust Islam, does not believe Islam is a real religion. So it was a very honest discussion. I asked them, what is that we need to do? And they said that when they invite Muslims to come to the churches to speak about Islam, all they hear is the 5 pillars of Islam, rituals. And also when Muslim speakers go there, half of the language is in Arabic, and they feel lost when they start speaking Arabic or reciting Arabic verses. So we designed a course, Muslim Speakers course. It is just not for Muslims. It is for all humanity, and we have Christians and Hindus attending the course. The idea is we need to emphasize the 5 pillars of Islam will always be there, but we have sidelined that. The most important part of Islam is how to build a society where all of us can live in harmony and in social cohesion. Given that Islam contributes richly towards building such society, with the values, I have put down 12 values, Sahar. values like being truthful, being just, being honest, not taking the fifth. And these are the values that we have failed to emphasize. These values contribute to making America a great place to live because Islam contributes to harmony, justice, truthfulness, social cohesion. So we have developed this course, a three-part course, and we have, thank God, we have 25 people attended the first one, and the second one is coming up on December 3rd, and we have like 30 registrations for it. And I'm hoping when they are ready, we're going to give the media training too. When they are ready to get out, they can let to the churches, synagogues, civic centers, media, wherever they are. They can speak about Islam as something that contributes towards the well-being of the society. Forget the religion, religious part that is personal. When you become Muslim, you pray. When you are not a Muslim, when you are in the common civic society, public square, you are like everybody else. Have the manners to deal with other people. So that Islam is what we're teaching in the Muslim speaker schools, and I hope we can take this nationally, and that is what is needed, Sahar, for Muslims to relate with non-Muslims on the basis of civil conversation and the ability to relate with each other in their day-to-day living. And this is critical. Thanks for asking this. And we will continue this course throughout the year.
Excellent. Very good. Oh, thank you for this excellent effort. We'll come back again to this interesting conversation right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
A car accident can change your life in an instant. As a result of a car accident, you may become unemployed. As a result of a car accident, you may need a lot of medical treatment. People think that insurance companies are on their side. Why? Because they're giving them one or two benefits. Are they giving them all the benefits they deserve? How would one know unless you consult with an attorney? Call the law offices of Jumana Kiruz at 248-557-3645. 248-557-3645.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are discussing today the second part of a very important topic, American Muslims in a changing America, new realities and new dynamics. And with me this morning discussing this important topic are my guests, Dr. Mike Ghouse and Ms. Younis. And before going to the commercial break, we were talking about the role of social media, and then we talked about the importance of training Muslim speakers who can address the media and also talk about Islam in different places, including houses of worship. Ines, it's very important to also give people facts and figures. I mean, it's a fact that, for example, 96% of so-called terror crimes committed on U.S. soil were committed by non-Muslims and people who have absolutely no affiliation with Islam. That means that 4% or less of these crimes have been committed by those who affiliate themselves with some kind of Islamic organization or movement. And also it is a well-known fact that most of the victims of terror and terrorism have been Muslims themselves. Yet these facts are not well known to many audiences and publics, especially non-Muslims. Again, your own comment or remark about the importance of the point that me and Mike were talking about before the commercial break about training a new generation of Muslims who can speak to the media. And I know your own daughter is doing her own studies in film and writing. How important is it to try to take ownership of this particular area?
Of course, it's important. I mean, that goes without saying. But I think people, Sahar, trust their eyes more than they trust their ears. And I think our young people, but even the greater society, is hearing a lot of great things about Islam, but they need to see it. And part of seeing it is that we need an internal revolution within our own communities. We cannot get so fired up about Islamophobia and women's rights and talk about all the glorious elements of our Islamic faith, which I agree are objectively totally wonderful. And totally progressive, completely progressive, but they don't see that in our mosques, and our young people don't see that in our mosques. It is of no value to us if you have a lot of young Muslims out there in the media who no longer observe their faith, who no longer have an emotional attachment to their faith, and they may or may not have a Muslim name. That is not going to be as powerful as raising our children within strong Muslim communities that are indeed progressive, that practice what they preach, and that then go out there and showcase to the world that the benefits of their faith and the contribution that their faith has had in forming those personalities. You know, like our children becoming overly Americanized and not feeling, but what I mean by overly Americanized, I mean overly secularized, overly indulging in the popular culture, and not really having a Muslim identity other than saying that I, was born into one. It's not going to be an effective strategy for us. And I think we really do need to have an internal revolution in our mosques, and we need to start practicing a lot of the principles of Islam within our own communities, because statistics have shown that people fear immigrants more than they fear Muslims. It's just that those two terms have been made synonymous with each other. And a lot of the problems our young people are having with the mosque is cultural. A lot of the cultural baggage that people are bringing and kind of enforcing in the way we operate and the way we manage our religious institutions. And I think that needs to change before we can move forward. And
I think
so
you're highlighting a very two important points here, Ines. The first one is leading by example, that, good talk is good, but good talk is also cheap. At the end of the day, it's the role models and good examples that can really make a huge difference. That's a very important point. And the second point is the phenomenon known as unmosqued, which means that some people are staying away, unfortunately, from their places of worship or their mosques because they don't feel that they belong there, and these places are not attractive to them enough. And this is, again, a very important point that needs to be addressed. Thank you for raising these two important points, Ines. Mike, you also have part of your own programs through your important institute, American Muslim Institute, is the state of Muslims. And it's very important for Muslims, as we talked about it in the first part of this discussion, to know both their duties and also their rights, to know your rights and to know your duties as well as a Muslim American. How does programs like the ones you actually, have through your own American Muslim Institute, such as the State of Muslims, try to educate people about their own rights and duties as American Muslims?
In fact, that the evangelical meetings we had produced this Muslim speaker series. Because of the dialogue they had, there was a vacuum, there was a need for people to understand the civic values of Muslims, and that was the product out of that. And this is, and the first part of the program was understanding the First Amendment and the Constitution. We started our program with First Amendment. Muslims and everybody who has got any religious affiliation need to know the First Amendment in its entirety, its effects, how it was formed. And if we understand First Amendment, then we can deal with the issues more clearly. And that's the product of the state of Muslims. And now we had another meeting last week, and inshallah from there, we're going to create one more activity from there to do more integration. One of the things that, one of the other programs I have from the Center for Pluralism, Sahar, is we just started the workshop, Understanding Religion. That is a 3 hours intensive workshop where we learn about atheism, Baha'i, Buddhist, Christian, Jain, Jewish, Sikh, Zoroastrian, pagan, and Native Americans. As Muslims, it is our duty to know about others. It is very important. And we talk about other religions without knowing it. So we want to hear firsthand what each religion is from the practitioners of that faith. That program is going, and we have the Baha'i program, Buddhist program on December 22nd. So all these programs lead to one conclusion. How do we integrate? How we know each other? The more we know, the less the problems we have. And adding to in us, fear of the unknown is the main reason we have these differences and conflicts. And we talk about it, But what have we done about being known? And that is, we are not part of the July 4th parade. We're not part of the Memorial Day. We're not part of the Veterans Day parade. Americans, you will not believe on the Memorial Day. I have been going to the Memorial Day for the last several years. In Kentucky, I went there to the Memorial Day. The veterans asked me, do you have a relative buried here? I said, no. And why are you here? I said, this is my duty as a Muslim to honor the dead, honor those who have sacrificed their lives for the safety, security, and freedom of other people. And that's why I come here. And they could not believe a Muslim really honors our veterans. It should not be the case. And that changed the perception of so many veterans by being there merely for about 1 hour. Next year, they want me to come and be one of the keynote speakers at the Veterans Day Memorial. All of us Muslims can do this every day. We need to be a part of the society.
Absolutely, and I think that integration, inclusion, and also the value of pluralism, which I know for sure that your group, the American Muslim Institute and Center for Pluralism, are emphasizing these values of diversity, inclusion, and pluralism, which I think are very important. This brings us to the last point and the last question, since we only have a few minutes left, unfortunately, which is really standing up with and for the other. I am a commissioner with the Human Rights Commission in Montgomery County, Maryland, and we did have a number of important town hall meetings with different publics and different groups here in the county, and people speak their minds and they also show solidarity. And we had a very important event on November 20th, which is Standing Up for Montgomery Way, which attracted more than 800 people standing up together in unity and solidarity for and with each other. Ines, I know that you're also a member of different interfaith groups and movements, including Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, which is going to have this important conference on December 4th, this coming Sunday, December 4th, attracting more than 400 American Muslim and Jewish women. What is the symbolic value of this moment of unity, and what kind of message does it send? In just very few minutes, please.
Well, the message it sends is that we're in this together, and that we have a lot to learn from each other. And I think that this is the visual of us getting together is a powerful message to send out to America, because this is what America is about. It is about celebrating our diversity. It is about protecting our diversity. And I think the misconception about interfaith is that you have to dilute your faith in order to get along with people of other persuasions. And that is actually the opposite. The point of interfaith is to celebrate and to protect our differences, because a healthy society is a diverse society. A uniform society is not a healthy society. It is the very definition of a totalitarian nation. So this is why interfaith is so critical. And I think faith-based initiatives are so critical, because leading with that foot, leading with the foot of faith and belief and religion, to me is a metaphysically very powerful force.
So it's really about unity, not uniformity, right? We can be diverse, all in one in all. The whole idea is not to be uniform, but to be united and to stand up together in solidarity for and with each other.
Yes.
To try.
We are united in our
solidarity.
desire to have a diverse society. We are united in our commitment to pluralism and diversity.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Amen to that. And I think both of you, Ines, Younis, and Dr. Mike Ghouse, are living examples of how we can promote these great values of inclusion, diversity, solidarity, and unity. And I would like to thank you both very much, not just for being my guests last time and today, but also for the great work that you're both doing in this world. Thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you, Sahar. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless you. And thanks so much to all our listeners today. God bless you all. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much. Stay blessed and goodbye.